For years, we've been poking fun at Apple's naming schemes, especially with their Pro devices. But this year's iPhone 15 Pro brings a little bit more to the table. And while this year's 15 Pro series hasn't undergone a dramatic facelift, it does introduce several smaller, yet collectively very important upgrades, which when all put together makes this feel like the first iPhone truly worthy of its Pro name. The new action button, log video recording, its titanium build, and of course its switch to USB-C are the biggest new features. Now, even though I think it's fair to say that 90% of your experience with the 15 Pro is going to be identical to the 14 Pro, the 13, maybe even the 12, it's that other 10% that, at least for me, has made this my favorite iPhone upgrade to date. The base model of the iPhone 15 Pro starts at the same $999 as last year with 128 gigabytes of storage. Dropping its 128 gigabyte option, the iPhone 15 Pro Max now starts at $1199. And although this price does match the storage configuration and cost of the 256 gigabyte 14 Pro Max from last year, for those who don't necessarily need that extra 128 gigabytes of storage, this $200 gap between the two Pro models may be enough to sway them away from the larger Pro Max. Now, I do suspect this could be part of Apple's larger plan of gradually phasing out 128 gigabytes completely from their Pro lineup, possibly even extending this trend to their entire range of phones. If that's the case and Apple does make 256 gigabytes as the new base storage option for all their devices, we might see a $100 increase across the board starting next year. Importantly, the 15 series, specifically the Pro and Pro Max, address many of the long-standing quirks and drawbacks that iPhones have had for a number of years, and potentially some of the things that have kept die-hard Android fans from switching in the first place. With the arrival of USB-C in the iPhone ecosystem finally, this unlocks a lot of possibilities. For years, my iPhone felt like the odd one out amongst my other tech devices, forcing me to remember to carry around a dated lightning cable anywhere I went, just so that I could charge my phone when the battery got low. The adoption of USB-C is definitely a welcome shift and is undoubtedly one of the most significant changes here. Yes, Apple was backed into a corner by the EU to make this move, but the benefits go beyond just charging convenience. Apple being Apple, of course, they bundle the iPhone 15 Pro with a USB 2.0 cable, which in fairness a lot of other manufacturers do, but Apple is touting their sustainability efforts and they're still pushing users to buy yet another cable after the fact. The included cable is going to be sufficient enough for charging, but if you happen to own or purchase a faster USB 3 cable, that's where you can then unleash the full potential of the 10 gigabits per second transfer speeds. That means that copying over those Pro photo and video files from your phone is going to become remarkably more convenient. It's important to note though that the support for USB 3.2 Gen 1 is exclusive to the 15 Pro series. That said, it wouldn't be surprising if Apple continues this as a signature Pro feature in future models as well. Moving on to camera performance, the 15 Pro sports 3 cameras, a 24mm 48 megapixel main camera with an f1.78 aperture, an f2.2 13mm 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and an f2.8 77mm 12 megapixel telephoto. These three cameras are largely the same to the 14 Pro, especially when you're taking photos during the day. That said, as with most other iPhone upgrades, the benefits are mostly noticeable in lower light. Both the 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max have a larger 48 megapixel main sensor on the camera, which also does help capture more detail with your stills. It was apparent that the iPhone 15 Pro didn't need to activate its night mode as quickly. Also, the upgraded Photonic engine works its magic behind the scenes, resulting in low light images with improved noise control and retained sharpness. Another cool convenience thanks to its faster processor is the elimination of the need to switch between photo mode or portrait mode. If a person, cat, or dog are detected in the frame, the camera automatically collects depth data. This allows you to then decide either now or later if you want a standard photo or a portrait. One of the key differences though between the Pro and the Pro Max is that the Pro Max has a 5x tetraprism telephoto lens. At an equivalent of 120 millimeters, that's probably too much zoom for most of the subjects you want to capture. Unless it's landscapes or a building really far away, it's really hard to get, say, a full subject, like a person, in frame without, needing to cross the other side of the street. It makes it far more limited in that sense. But beyond that, there's also a bigger limitation, and that is between the standard 24mm all the way to 120mm, zooming between that range is completely digital. And as someone who frequently relies on that 77mm 3x lens found on the 15 Pro, if I was to try to capture an equivalent shot with the 15 Pro Max, quality on the 15 Pro Max would be noticeably worse. But easily what had me most excited to upgrade to the 15 Pro from my 14 Pro Max is the addition of native support for log video recording. While I've been more than happy to travel lighter and leave my real cameras like my Sony a7S III or a7 IV behind to take photos with my iPhone, that's never really been the case with videos. The power to now capture videos with greater dynamic range and flexibility is a game changer for creators, and so even though iPhones have always delivered impressive video quality with excellent stabilization, vibrant colors, and sharpness, Apple tends to apply a somewhat heavy-handed processing that can make the videos look overly stylized, to say the least. It's excellent for quick shareable videos, but it falls short when it comes to creating more professional content. Even with the introduction of cinematic mode in previous iterations, it often felt like a gimmick. This wasn't truly a pro feature. Third-party apps like Moment and Filmic Pro offered more manual controls and different video profiles, including simulated log, but they couldn't provide an actual increased dynamic range when you were filming, as there was no additional information in the shadows or highlights. Now with the 15 Pro series, after you dig through a few pages of settings, you can now enable ProRes encoding with support for log, HDR, or SDR. It does open up a new level of editing flexibility that was previously unavailable with iPhone video files. Beyond facilitating color correction and refining the look, log also eliminates the excessive sharpening that iPhones tend to apply and bake in. All that said, of course, Apple still doesn't really trust its users, and what I mean by that is, aside from frame rate and choosing which camera to record with, Apple doesn't think we need to have control over shutter speed, ISO, or white balance. So how is this truly pro? I understand the desire to keep the camera app easy to use, but I'd imagine most, if not all, users who are filming in log are also looking for these more advanced, seemingly necessary controls. On a more positive note, Blackmagic, the company behind DaVinci Resolve, the video editing tool, has launched the Blackmagic Cam app, and it's just in time. This app thankfully fills the void by providing access to those missing features I mentioned. It not only supports Apple Log, but also allows you to record in up to Apple ProRes 444. Even better, this comes at the low cost of completely free. What's even more exciting is the boost in USB-C speeds. You now have the power to record videos onto external SSDs or even SD cards if you have a compatible reader. And funny enough, within Apple's own default camera app, not only is this an option, but it actually becomes a requirement if you intend to record log at 4K 60 frames per second. I'm curious to see the possibilities of future third-party cases and accessories that more seamlessly integrate these external storage solutions or even accessory adapters into your phone case. For now though, it still blows my mind that I can record video directly onto an SD card and then effortlessly transfer that footage to my MacBook without any weird convoluted process, which is usually typical of Apple if they allow it at all. Moving on to the action button, a lot of users will probably miss the tactile satisfaction of sliding to silence mode, knowing at a quick glance that your phone won't go off during a wedding, but this year's switch is more useful. I have mine set to quickly launch the camera into its video mode, proving handy for those impromptu video captures. As simple as it seems, this was a huge surprise to me, and kudos to Apple for allowing users to customize the button however they want, not just limiting them to using Apple's own apps or shortcuts. Surprising, but a huge step towards flexibility, which is very unlike Apple. But on the other hand, it is a little bit underwhelming because the absence of support for double clicks to trigger additional actions beyond what you've assigned to a single press feels like a major oversight. It leaves us wanting to retain the convenience of silencing our phones while also enjoying a secondary function. And while some third-party workarounds do exist using other apps, I'm hoping Apple will bring native support for this in the future. Side by side, the 15 Pro looks nearly identical to its predecessor. Love it or hate it, for right now, it seems Dynamic Island is here to stay. I personally like it. Now you can't talk about the 15 series without mentioning its new titanium build. This year, Apple has replaced its stainless steel frame, which they've been using on their Pro series for several years. I honestly wasn't even a fan of the shinier bezels found on previous Pros. To me, they looked premium for about 5 minutes, but quickly became a smudge and scratch magnet. Your color choices this year are all titanium themed. Natural titanium, blue titanium, white titanium, and black titanium. The iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max also get narrower and more rounded bezels around the screen. The switch to titanium and smoothing out its edges has allowed the iPhone 15 Pro models to drop 19 grams from its predecessors. Altogether, that makes the iPhone 15 Pro noticeably lighter in hand and easier to hold. Given that performance is always a major talking point in Apple's iPhone keynotes, the iPhone 15 Pro doesn't disappoint.
As expected, it's the fastest iPhone to date, but we all knew it would be, right? Dropping the Bionic name, the speed boost comes courtesy of the new 3nm A17 Pro processor. And while it won't make everyday tasks like app launches, web browsing, or gaming feel dramatically smoother, it does bring some notable improvements. Apple claims that this CPU is about 10% faster than the A16 from last year, while its GPU performance is around 20% faster. The 15 Pro also improves with a RAM increase from 6GB to 8GB. This allows your phone to keep more apps stored in memory in the background, resulting in slightly improved multitasking. For the first time ever, this GPU also supports mesh shading and hardware-accelerated ray tracing. There currently aren't any games capable of taking advantage of this new GPU performance, but Apple has teased some upcoming ones like Death Stranding, Resident Evil Village, and Resident Evil 4.
With all that said, as great as this iPhone 15 Pro has been, there is one major issue at play, and that is overheating.
The exact cause of this widespread problem hasn't exactly been pinpointed, but it's suspected that a combination of that more powerful 3nm A17 Pro chip and the switch to titanium, which probably less effective at dissipating heat from the phone compared to stainless steel, is the culprit. At seemingly random moments, I've experienced times where my iPhone 15 Pro has become uncomfortably hot to touch. I'm not talking about scenarios like using it outdoors in direct sunlight and recording 4K 60 frames per second log for extended periods of time. No, instead, it's usually where I'm simply charging the phone indoors, maybe reading Apple News or playing solitaire or something like that, and it triggers a warning message that charging has been put on hold until the phone temperatures return to normal. And sure, this can be normal for newer iPhones to warm up slightly during the first few days of use, especially as they're indexing and optimizing things in the background. But for this to persist over a week into 2 and 3 weeks, not so much. Apple has recently acknowledged this issue and attributed it to software bugs, but until this fix does arrive, I'm bracing for more episodes of overheating and occasional unexpected battery drain.
So again, for the most part, the iPhone 15 Pro is going to feel pretty much identical to the previous 14, 13, and maybe even the 12 Pro. But the introduction of Usbc with faster transfer speeds, and of course the convenience of now using one wire to charge all your devices, the action button, and my personal favorite, being able to record log natively on an iPhone, together makes this feel like the first Apple phone truly worthy of that Pro name. So thanks again for watching this review. This has been Paul with MakeUseOf.com. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments down below. And until the next time, we'll catch you later.